They will.
Okay, it's 7:15 on February 21st. We'll call to order the City of Brainerd Personnel and Finance Committee meeting, and we'll start with introductions.
Kevin Stunick, Alderman at Large.
Connie Hillman, Finance Director.
Jennifer Bergman, City Administrator.
Kara Terry, Ward 1.
Chris Schubert, HR Director.
Mike Besto, Police Chief.
Jim Johnson, Chair of the Committee. We have 4 items on the agenda tonight. First is to accept the resignation of Community Service Officer Mason Barton and a request to hire. Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. February 13th, CSO Officer Mason Barton had submitted his letter of resignation. Be effective the 27th. Barton's resignation leaves the department with just 3 CSOs. But starting in May, 2 of these CSOs will be attending the Law Enforcement Skills Program, which will be leaving us one intern. So what we're looking at is to accept the CSO Mason Barton's letter of resignation, effective the 27th, February 27th, and authorized to hire 1 community service officer to fill his vacant position.
Nice old.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you, Chief. Next up is to ratify the hiring of warming house attendant Owen Carlson.
Good evening. Owen Carlson was hired as a warming house attendant for our Parks and Rec Department. He was hired effective January 28th at $15 per hour. In addition, staff is also asking for clarification in the future if you would like these temporary employee hires to be ratified through the Personnel and Finance Committee, or if they should be placed on consent. As long as they're budgeted, non-controversial positions, we thought that that met or complied with the rules of decorum. But in the past, we've asked the Personnel and Finance Committee Chair. Last year, Gabe said, well, why don't we do it through PNF? So we thought we'd ask today. So I don't know if there's discussion on that part, or?
I have no problem with going to the consent.
I have no preference either way. I don't recall ever saying go
Keeps
to
it clean.
yeah. So you say put it on consent?
That's what I would do.
Consent.
Okay, let's put for future hirings on consent. But we have this one in front of us.
So the motion is to ratify the hiring of Owen Carlson as a warming house attendant effective January 28th at $15 per hour. Further, that in the future, the ratification of hiring temporary seasonal employees that are budgeted be on the consent calendar instead of the Personnel and Finance Committee agenda for approval.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Do we need to make a motion for this day forward to go on the consent?
That's
Just leave
part
it?
of the motion.
That's part of
In
it.
the future,
Okay.
the ratification
Okay.
will be on the consent calendar. Any discussion?
Nope.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Next up is the retirement of the police chief.
Next item.
Okay, the next item is actually the resignation of our police chief. Police Chief Vestal has submitted his letter of resignation. His retirement will be effective June 16th. However, his last working day will be June 2nd. Staff is asking for, to accept the retirement of Police Chief Vestal and to authorize his severance pay. We have attached an updated job description. A couple things have changed since we did this in 2018. The police department no longer reports to the mayor, and we also no longer have a civil service commission. So we took those couple of minor things out. And then the last thing was staff was asking to conduct an internal only hiring process for our police chief position.
So move over what Chris said.
Second.
And you're fine with all 3 of those being one motion?
Yeah.
Chris? Yeah, I know, yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for being police chief, Mike.
Thank you.
And thanks for giving us nearly 6 months' notice to try and figure this shit out. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. You're gonna have to whip up the 4 votes between now and 7:30.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
just one comment, just a big thank you. We've been really lucky to have Chief Vestal. I think he's done an amazing job with that police department, just from a staff perspective, and just so grateful of everything Mike has done in the last couple of months.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is to discuss EPM Language Practice Council, EPU Health Insurance.
So, in the process of looking at our health insurance exhibit for our employee policy manual, we were in the process of updating that for our 2023 and 2024 splits. And we started looking at the information for the council and the BPU Commission health insurance. And I realized that I had followed our long-standing practice of how to calculate the premiums for our plans versus following the employee policy manual language that was updated in August of 2022. So I put some information in the memo to try to explain what happened, how it's calculated, all of those types of things. I'm not sure if you want me to go into all of those details or if the information in the memo was sufficient.
I read it. Do you guys have any
I
questions?
did read it, I have no questions.
Okay.
I think it's fine.
Okay, so at the end, staff was asking for council clarification how the council and BPU Commission health insurance should be processed in the future. Some options that we thought of are, since we're in the middle of the compensation study, request a market review and guidance from our classification and compensation consultant, Flaherty and Hood. They have quoted us a rate of $800 to obtain and analyze the market for not only the health insurance, but actually the compensation as well. I talked to Kelly about this last week, and when we were talking to Kelly, he said, you know, he's aware that there's not a lot of communities that offer health insurance, not a lot of cities. However, the wages are usually a lot more. So is that something we should be looking at so that it's fair? One other thing I just learned from our health insurance broker is they are starting to look at a family affordability issue too. So not only the single premium has to be affordable, but then the family is as well. That's just in the infant stages. I don't know what all that means as well, but we're trying to keep up on that. The second item was to follow the 2022 health insurance language that was in there. That would be for the, again, 2024 elections. We cannot change anything for 2023. Third item is update the employee policy manual language to follow the previous practice, and I attached some sample language. Utilize the contribution percentages as negotiated for employees was option number 4. And the last option, what else do you think of? So with that.
So question on the difference between 3 and 4. So previous practice and the same contribution percentages as employees, weren't those the same thing up
So-
until last year, 2 years ago, whatever?
No, the council has had different percentages for
We
a
have.
while.
Okay.
And the employees have more of a prorated amount based on the different plans they have, so they are not the same.
Okay.
When you look at the information, it kind of shows that in the spreadsheet that was attached, as far as what the employees pay, what the past practice calculation was, and then what the current employee policy manual is.
Okay, well, we've got 5 options, the 5th being an infinite number of solutions.
One of the things we talked about in here was, should there be an HSA contribution? Right now, that isn't in any of your options, so that's why I left number 5 in there as a possibility.
I like number 1.
What'd you say?
Number 1. Just make sure we're supposed to be where we're at.
I can live with that.
Let's make a motion.
Make a motion.
I so move we go with number 1. Is that a sufficient motion?
I'll second.
And authorize the payment of the $800 for that.
Yes.
Yeah, which should have been part of our compensation study anyway, because we are employees of the city of Brainerd. But I get it. I'll vote for it and support it upstairs. They're just gonna come back and give us these same options, plus maybe a couple more options we get to decide, and it's going to be up to us to make the decision on this eventually. Flaherty and Hood ain't gonna make the decision. They're just gonna give us even more options.
Correct.
But, you know, I think we should just follow past practice, but we'll go with this and see what Flaherty and Hood has. I can support that. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Anything else to come before the committee? With that, we're adjourned at 7:25.